Okay, so please stop talking and listen carefully. Um, this thing will work in a while. We are just figuring out how it, and it's not so important what I'm telling you. Um, so this is the first TechRaking we are participating in as Corrective, and I'm pretty nervous because I don't know at all what TechRaking is. So I'm very excited. But Joaquin told me that it's kind of fun and we are going to find out something new. And I'm already into it when it's something new. I'm in the news business. Yeah, some words about Corrective. Corrective is a non-profit newsroom. I think everybody knows about Corrective. If not, there's some material about us and you can read what we are doing and what we are not doing. We are not doing business. That's why we call non-profit. Okay, that's enough from my side. I'm very excited. I'm happy that you are here. And the next one who's giving an introduction is Isa. She's also participating in this TechRaking, and she already was a participant of it. So maybe she tells.
Thank you, David. Hi, good morning. So I'm Isa. I'm leading the News Lab, the Google News Lab for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And we are very proud to support TechRaking, and CRR has been a long partner of Google and the Google News Lab. So very excited to bring TechRaking to Berlin this morning and today. A bit about the Google News Lab. So our mission is to collaborate with journalists and to empower innovation in journalism. And we do that in 3 ways. First, trainings. So we offer trainings and workshops to journalists to learn about trends, maps, Google Earth, and digital storytelling with those tools. Secondly, we focus a lot on trends to really empower data journalism, starting with Google Trends sometimes. And then the third part is programs. We call it programs, but basically it's our effort to support organizations in the field of investigative journalism in innovation, or at the intersection of media and technology. So TechRaking is part of that program. So CRR is a partner, Hacks&Hackers as another partner. And we really, we really want to support these organizations and experiment and also learn new things from you, how you think about the future of journalism. The Google News Lab is an international or global team. We are 3 people in Europe, and in Europe we are part of the Digital News Initiative. Most of you have heard of it. It's an initiative among Google and European publishers, and we look at 3 things. So we look at product development. We want to figure out what are the products that we should, together with the European publishers, develop and build in order to tackle some of the outstanding challenges in the ecosystem. Second, it's the training part, which the Google News Lab powers in Europe. And third, it's the innovation fund. And some of the lucky winners of the first round are, of course, here in the room. So the innovation fund is really focused on driving and empowering innovation in journalism. So we want to support young startups. We also want to support innovation happening within traditional organizations, media organizations. We closed the first round in early this year, so in February, announced the first round of winners. And we had some learnings, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm here all day and you can approach me, but we got some learnings out of the first round and we saw some trends. And part of the trends that we saw is, for example, virtual reality, personalization, robotic reporting or robotic journalism, machine learning, and audio. So podcasts, we saw many projects that focused on audio and audio storytelling. And of course, we looked at all the projects and we were pretty excited that from 23 countries. We were able to give funding to 128 projects. Combined, that means 27 million euros across these 23 countries and 128 projects. And what we also saw as a learning, or as a couple of learnings, is that startups or the projects that are applying for the fund can be much more specific in the way they present their projects, and much more collaborative. And that's something that we really want to see in the second round, that traditional media organizations and startups and small teams collaborate and apply with a joint project. So the second round is going to start before summer. If you want to know more about it, just come to me and ask me. But now, really excited to be here and to support TechRaking, CRR, and Corrective. And I'm going to be here just to learn and listen. And now I'm handing over to the man who is behind all this, Joaquin.
Hi. I told David and the team, I got to get one of these stages because this could be all day in our office just making this happen. First of all, thanks for being here. We're all going to get to know each other today. TechRaking is like a blind date. I don't know what the German word for that is, but a blind date, yeah. You're like, I don't know, is this going to work out? But let me tell you, if we all get lucky, here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet people you didn't know before. You're going to think differently about the problems we confront as journalists. And you're going to find ways to resource innovation. And so the spirit of this is like a hackathon and a design sprint and raising kids and rebelling against your parents and throwing a fit and trying really hard, all at once. So the Center for Investigative Reporting is the first nonprofit in the US to focus on investigative reporting. We're turning 40 next year, so we're having our midlife crisis right now. We've always worked with partners, both nationally and internationally. We've always worked on all platforms. Any platform that has ever existed, we've done stuff on, including coloring books for kids, live theater, video games, animations. You'll hear about our VR studio that we're working on our first project with our partners here in Berlin from the last TechRaking. So we're very promiscuous, and we like to share. But we know how hard it is to actually start anything in journalism. Unfortunately, it's easy to kill things now, right? And we're still seeing many, many great journalists lose their jobs. We're still seeing many, many issues not get covered. And we're still seeing many, many powerful forces with nobody covering them. So our other goal, which we put as much energy as possible into, is just trying to help investigative reporting around the world. Because it's dangerous, it's expensive, and it is going away. So we need to make a stand. We need a movement that pushes back against this, and we need partners. So my deep thanks to Corrective, which is an example of what we need more of in this country and in Europe. And my thanks to Google. You won't know, but I'll say she was in yesterday training 53 freelancers, right? It's hand-to-hand combat, right, to make this thing go. And so I do really thank Google for helping to get all this going and to put money back into the market. So throughout the day, as the discussion happens, there's whiteboard paper all around the room. Think about, for the second half of the day, what is something that you want to solve? What is an idea you've wanted to pursue? What is a pain in the ass you need to fix in service of supporting journalists working at this critical time in Europe? So it might be that, hey, I want to know how to fill in the blanks, or I keep running into fill in the blanks, or why can't we fill in the blanks? So think about problems that an integrated, diverse team could come up with a concept for, and then we're going to just build out that concept today. Sometimes people write a little code. Sometimes they get up here and sing a song. Sometimes they have a role-playing thing. Sometimes they do a storyboard. Sometimes they do a presentation. There are no rules in terms of how to creatively express your ideas today. The only rule is you have to have at least one other person work with you. You can't be a one-person team. So we'll get more into the details of the second half of the day, but just be thinking throughout the conversation. If something sparks an idea, please go write it down. And then when the pizza comes, we'll kind of massage it all into a group of teams that'll go work on these things. And then our promise is that we will help whatever team forms build whatever it is that wins the day. So sometimes it takes us about a year, which is last year's TechRaking in Berlin, is to today having a baby finally. Sometimes it's a little bit less time, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. And I'll describe some of those projects later today. But we're here, it's an excuse to get to know each other. And even if we don't get married, this blind date means more dates to come in the future. I'm very happy to introduce the host for our first panel, though. If you'll join me in welcoming Brent Goff from Deutsche Welle.
Oh my gosh, yeah, wow. Yeah. Thank you. Is the mic on? Is it on?
That's mic's on.
Is it on? Can everybody hear me? All right, I'm going to sit down. It's been a long week. Yeah, my name is Brent Goff. I have a show on television, Deutsche Welle, for the English channel Monday through Friday, which is called The Day. And what we do is we take the news stories of the day and we rehash them and we try to ask questions that usually don't get asked. And coming here today, I think, is a real luxury for journalists, because in the daily practice of journalism, we rarely have time to actually think about why it is that we're doing the things we do, what kind of stories we want to get out, who's going to want to read or watch our stories. And lots of times we also have to fight what I call cognitive crutches. I'll give you an example. When I came to Berlin back in 1999, I was a reporter and a field producer for CNN. And we had to every day we had to sell our stories to Atlanta. And I noticed a pattern after a while. They would reject story after story after story, but the things that they would accept were stories that had the following characteristics. They would involve something with German beer, or they had something to do with Bavaria and Oktoberfest, or there was something about the Holocaust, or there was something about Nazis, or since we were in Berlin, there was something about the Cold War. But I'm sure all of you know, as well as I do, that the story about Germany, the story about Europe, is comprised of many other things, right? The identity is not these maybe iconic moments, but there's a lot more to that. But the editors would always shut that down. So the challenge came, how do I convince my editors to take stories that are maybe not expected? And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And what we want to do today is we want to kind of ask ourselves with our guests, are we reporting the stories that need to be reported? If not, why not? And what should we be considering when we report these stories? And of course, we're talking about Europe and the problems that Europe is facing. I'm going to offer a hypothesis, and we can talk about that and see at the end of the discussion if we've made any progress on it. I think what we're seeing with the refugee crisis, with the Euro crisis, with the stance of the German Chancellor, with the divisions within Europe, I think there is a very strong and very covert attempt to force a federalistic Europe to arise, a United States of Europe. And I think too that there may be elements that would appear to be against that are actually working towards that very end. But we're not reporting that story like we should. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on. I'm sure with that thesis I would probably never get invited back to an SPD or a Green event, but that's the reality, I think. All right, we've got three guests today who are going to help with this discussion, and they all have fascinating backgrounds. They've done fascinating work. They're still doing fascinating work, and very different as well. I'm going to ask all three of them if they would just come up on the stage now. It's Ruben Neugebauer, Cecilia Anesi, and Harold Schumann. I'll start with ladies first. Cecilia she's a journalist. She's co-founder of investigative reporting, Project Italy. Her specialties are organized crime, and the project, investigative reporting, Project Italy, does a lot with the far right in Europe. So those are the things that we're going to talk a little bit about today with her. And then to my right is Mr. Schumann, who, by the way, has a great YouTube channel. I mean, the interviews are great because I've been looking at them. And he's made a name for himself covering finance and the Eurozone economy, the banking system. And he's here today to talk to us about the money element in the European story. And then to my far right is Ruben Neugebauer. And when were you on the ship the last time?
I was on the ship the last time when we started in Hamburg to send our new ship to the Mediterranean in March.
In March.
And I will go back soon.
You'll go back soon. I mean, he works with Sea-Watch. It's called Sea-Watch, right?
Sea-Watch, correct.
Which is basically, it's a boat, a frigate, right? That goes out, and you're helping refugees who are trying to come from North Africa across the Mediterranean to Europe. So he's actually helping them, and you're not necessarily rescuing them, but you're giving them.
Yeah, we are actually, but we don't transfer them to the European Union. That's what we let other ships do.
Right.
Because what we want is to keep up the pressure on the European Union to act. So if we would just do the shuttle service, then we would just take the responsibility from the state, and we think they should do it on their own.
Okay. Let's start with you. What do you think then, since this discussion is about Europe being under pressure, what's the biggest problem right now facing Europe?
I guess the most fundamental questions is we have some European values, and the question is if we trust ourselves, and if we make those European values, where we got the Nobel Peace Prize for, if we make them valid. Because at the moment, the big pressure is that European values are valid with a European passport. And what we are doing at the moment is we are setting up a fence around Europe, and at the same time these measures are not working at all. What we face at the moment with a lot of efforts to keep the refugees out of Europe is that we have more refugees coming, for example, in the central Mediterranean route in this year than last year. And there are a lot of more people to come because there is nothing done on the causes. There is nothing done to help them stay where they are, actually, because nobody escapes just for fun.
Well, what's the story? What's the story here, though? Is the story here that there needs to be a safe way for people to get here,
exactly,
or is the story that things need to be done so that people don't want to leave to begin with?
I guess there is sometimes the question: where's the chicken? Where's the egg? Because I mean, at the moment, we should ask ourselves if we are willing to let people die on the Med, and if we say no, then we have to get a safe and legal passage, because it will simply take a long time to change something on the causes of their escape. And on the same time, if we have safe and legal passage, people will come actually for a certain time, and then we might have to think of how to do something in the countries of origin. Because at the moment, we just try to stop them at our borders, and we just don't care about what's happening down there. And so I guess this goes hand in hand. We have, on the one hand, to give them a safe passage, because for me it's simply unacceptable to allow people to die at our borders and to force them on little rubber boats, which have no chance to reach Europe at all.
Right.
And so if we set up safe and legal passage, we will get under pressure for sure for a certain time, and this might lead also to an attitude to be willing to take serious steps.
Okay, let's just go around the round here. Just ask, what do you think is the biggest problem?
Well, as you said, like I work a lot on organized crime, not just with IRPI, which is the Investigative Reporting Project Italy, but also with Corrective. I mainly been focusing on Italian mafia, but concerning the migrant crisis, we also produced, Corrective produced an investigation called The Hidden Fleet, where we basically trying to trace, there was a specific moment in which what we reconstructed was like a Syrian cooperative, so to say, like certain families they owned cargo ships and they were sending those cargo ships filled of migrants to Italy. So in terms of the Syrian crisis or migrant crisis, one of the big problems that we're facing is that our police forces and authorities have no means to actually act and stop traffickers. So on one side, I agree with him, like you cannot leave people die, but on the other side, you should also do something more effective to stop this trading of people, because then it gets into very nasty things that is not just, I mean, people brought by cargoes are the luckiest that you can find, but then if you go into, for example, Eritrean migrants, you also find nasty organs trafficking and all these kind of things. But then at the same time, Europe, I think one of the big crises we're facing is the fact that as like we stop migrants at the border, but we don't stop money. It's very easy to launder money from one country to another. Like our mafias are not investing in our country anymore because we have a very good anti-mafia law that like we can seize assets. But that doesn't happen in Germany, in the UK, in France, and so on and so forth. So it's very easy if I'm a mafia boss to just move my assets up to Germany and buy. I mean, this is a very clear example. I think it was 2008. A mafia clan from Calabria, they launder, I think, 80 million euros in a day in Brussels, buying properties and next to the EU Parliament. And nobody stops this kind of movement.
Yeah, well, there's
so
probably a lot of
they
that.
stop migrants, but they don't stop.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of that in Mitte and Prenzlauer Berg as well, right now.
So I see these like one of the largest threats that we need to face.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the main objects are in Grunewald and Zehlendorf.
Okay, right.
Bigger amounts.
Yeah.
Well, for me, obviously, the main problem in Europe is the bad economic performance. Unemployment. We have countries with youth unemployment of 50% and more. Sorry. This is our main problem because it's politically explosive. Sooner or later, it will destabilize whole nations. If we do not overcome this economic misery, everything else will be lost.
Yeah.
Because, you know, then this is the direct path to renationalization, to a degradation of the European division of labor. We will lose productivity in our economy if we follow the same path as we did in the last 5 years. It will be the end of the European project. Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% sure. This is our main problem. Yeah.
So you're saying that the labor markets need to be reformed. The money markets or the ways of laundering money need to be stopped, and you're saying that the gates need to be open. I mean, is there any country in the world that's being asked to do that much at one time?
It's not the labor markets which are the problem. It's the austerity policy which is the problem. Yeah? Look what the US did and what Europe did between 2009 and 2015. In 2009, both the Eurozone and the US had average unemployment rate of over 10%. Yeah? In the US, we are back to 5. In Europe, we are still with 10.5. What happened? What is the main difference? Well, the difference is the austerity policy in Europe.
Right. But we don't have 10% here in Germany.
No.
Right. But we do in Greece.
The average in Europe is more than 10%.
Right.
Still.
But the question is, these are huge problems. And is there another place on the planet where they're being asked to address problems like this? I mean, can you think of a state that's being asked to master this much at one time? I mean, these are huge. These are like epic. So is there something that the Europeans should expect from their leaders and in our reporting too that is better than what we see in other places around the world?
actually, we should try to. We should try to. I mean, it's big challenges we are facing, and I totally agree with your points as well, because you will not have one single crisis. Kind of, it's a multiple crisis we have, and we have to face this multiple crisis if we want to have a come out, and in a way that we keep Europe as kind of free as it is.
But do we do a good job of reporting on this, though? Do you feel like all of these crises are getting reported and getting the attention that they deserve?
Well, I think our job could be done better, for sure. And what we lack is, we surely lack lots of information on issues, and in-depth information especially. Because then what happens is that the more you have crisis, the more you have poverty, the more you have ignorance, and then it's really easy for example, we mentioned them before, like right-wing movements to just fascinate people and to just pretend that the problems are not linked to austerity policies, but for example to like migrants conquering us or something like that.
And I would even think that those problems are more linked than we often think, and it would be also a task for journalism to get more into the links, because I totally agree with you that, for example, a big economic gap will be a really big problem, and I guess what we see right now with a lot of right-wing movements, it's linked to this problem, and I think if we would talk more about what are the reasons for a gap between rich and poor, and what are the reasons for unemployment here, if we would go more into that, and if we would go into the reasons for that, we wouldn't have the need to give the fault to the refugees coming and to set up walls around Europe, because if we really watch the statistic, we don't have a refugee crisis, because economically it's not a big deal at the moment for Europe to take host in some refugees.
To take in all these people. What do you think, Howard? I mean, he's saying that there needs to be better reporting. We need to link everything.
Well, it's easy to demand for better reporting. The more complicated is how to organize it. Yeah, of course. Well, the diagnosis is very clear. Yeah, 90% or even more of the Brussels press corps does not do his or her job. Yeah, our job is to challenge what those in power present us, and not just to transport one-to-one what they want us to believe. Yeah. But that's exactly what the Brussels press corps does. Yeah, and even worse. It's not just that they are just reproducing mainstream every day. It's even worse, they do it from a national perspective. This is what makes the reporting about European issues so particularly bad. Yeah? Because if you present to your audience the view of a European only through the glasses of a German or a French or an Italian or a Greek or what else, by this very reporting, you destroy Europe. You know, this is my basic experience when I did these two documentaries you mentioned. Is when I started, I thought, oh, I know nothing. I have to do research for months. I never will get it, and impossible to do. Yeah? And then I came to the crisis countries: Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Greece, and Cyprus. And suddenly I realized, hey, all the stories I'm looking for have been published already. Yeah. There are good colleagues who did the research, who have the contacts. Everything was done, but it was not being brought on the European level. So my main task for the two documentaries was simply to find friendly colleagues, ask them for the stuff they had already produced and their contacts, and collaborate with them. And this is my basic lecture for how to improve reporting in Europe is we have to collaborate across the borders. Yeah. Much more. It needs to be a day-to-day usual working methods. Yeah? To cross-border journalism in Europe is desperately needed, because by this we have an instrument or the tool to present to our audience, to our readers or viewers, a completely different perspective of what really is happening in Europe. I give you a very simple example. Until today, more than 90% of all Germans still believe that we, the German taxpayers, have saved the Greeks, have saved the Irish, have saved the Portuguese, and so on. If you really look what happened is, who we have saved are the creditors of Greece, the creditors of Ireland, and the creditors of Portugal. Who were those creditors? Mainly German and French investors. Yeah. So who did we save?
Ourselves, right?
No, not ourselves. Sorry, I have not enough money to invest in bank bonds in Portugal or Ireland and so on. No, it's our fellow filthy rich.
Deutsche Bank.
Yeah,
Deutsche Bank.
Who we saved.
Deutsche Bank.
Yeah? Those people who live in Grunewald, for example.
Deutsche Bank, you just say it.
The Deutsche Bank is the administrator of that.
Deutsche Bank owns like 80% of Greek bonds. Of course you're not going to let Greek go to, come on, it's obvious. You're saving yourself. Yeah, but no one wants to report that because that makes you look
the Deutsche Bank. The Deutsche Bank was the underwriter of Greek bonds, yes, but they do not own them themselves. They sold it to their clients, and their clients are Europe's wealthy. Yeah. What I want to say by this is, it's such a simple truth, and it's so easy to prove that this is what happened, that you really have to wonder why the hell this was not repeated every day, but instead it was repeated every day. We, the Germans, saved the Greeks. So how could this happen?
Because it's a cognitive crutch. It's easy to tell people something they already know, right? Germans have a good economy, have a strong economy, they can save others. Mm-hmm. I mean, that works.
So regarding the media or the journalism in Europe, sorry to say that, but our main problem is still not the lack of money or the lack of time to do research. Our main problem is that the great majority of us is not ready to challenge the mainstream. There is no critical consciousness among media people. Sorry to say that. It is the problem.
Can we ask them what they think? How many, by a show of hands, how many of you believe that as a journalist your job is to challenge and not accept the status quo? Yeah?
Okay, this is a very selective audience.
That's why they're sitting here, yeah. I mean, how much, like if you're covering politics, how many of you think that it's important to foster a friendly relationship with the politicians that you're writing about, who may give you an exclusive interview? Tell the truth. One honest woman here. Yeah, right? But right.
If you want to get a story.
If you want to get a story.
You better have relationships.
Right, because there was only one deep throat in the history of journalism, right? Right. I mean, if you alienate the politicians, who's going to give you the exclusive interview? We were talking about that. You know, I remember a long time ago, I was a speechwriter for Rita Zusmuth when the Bundestag was in Bonn. And I remember everyone there was afraid to ask a question that would piss off anybody in the Bundestag. They were talking about when Kohl was the chancellor. No one said anything that he didn't want to hear, because then they wouldn't be asked back for these little intimate interviews, that they would lose all of their access. Well, that's not journalism or democratic thinking, but it was like gang und gäbe. Everybody said that that's how things were done. So how do you break that?
Well, we have to become more like a cartel. Yeah, we have to organize ourselves again. You know, this is a very old idea. If you remember, you're American. There used to be a White House journalists cartel with a code of conduct and how to handle the right balance between distance and being near to the politicians and so on.
Right.
And what we here in Germany have, the Bundespressekonferenz, the basic idea originally was to have a level playing field for everybody and not these cozy relationships between certain media representatives and certain politicians and so on. But all this has been more or less forgotten because of this extreme competition among us. Yeah, everybody has to run for an exclusive quote, exclusive interview, exclusive paper, this and that. Yeah, and if you don't do it, the next day your editor calls, why Süddeutsche has it and you don't? Yeah?
Right.
And then you say, well, I was critical of him in my last commentary. That's not what you are paid for.
But it's always but competition's has always been there, right?
Yes, but not this kind of competition.
Really?
About this nonsensical single bit news, yeah, which are no news. Yeah? An exclusive quote of a certain politician. This is not really a news. Yeah. This is an artificially built pseudo news, and for this, most of us are running every day.
Well, I mean, that's why Bild Zeitung is the largest circulating newspaper in Europe, right? Because people like that kind of tweet, you know, even if it's not true, people, that's what sells, right?
Yeah.
Did someone have a question?
Yes.
Did you? Yeah.
Perhaps one of the positive things about the decline of print newspapers is that the value of an exclusive will decrease. So the problem will be solved by itself.
Okay, you see the
What
sunny side of
value
the
is
dark
there
story.
in an exclusive if it can be copied and repeated within a few minutes?
Well, an exclusive is supposed to show that a reporter has worked harder than anyone else, has also gotten access that no one else has. I mean, there is a cachet to that, right?
Yes. You
Right?
win prizes, but readers don't care about that. All they care is about the news they're consuming. They're not going to. They care very little about the prizes that you win. We don't like to hear this as journalists, but it's true.
Well, what do we think the readers, your European audiences, what do they care about? Maybe that's something we should ask ourselves. What do they want? Is it news that they want to know, or is it news that they should know? So are you a caretaker, or are you a service provider as a journalist? There's a big difference. You know, are you someone who thinks, yeah, I know better, or are you someone who was born from the 68er, you know, anti-autoritär, let them do whatever they want, and then they end up buying all your apartments in Mitte? You know, that's a side story, right? But I mean, what do, as journalists, these are huge problems. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to tell people what they need to know, or are you going to tell people what you think they will consume, which will ensure your economic viability?
Well, we always give them what they don't want, and it seems to work. I mean, what they didn't know they wanted. Like, we work as an independent center, so we're not into media strategy, or like, we don't have to do what a newspaper requires. So we don't have the problem of your colleague that has to jump to the politician to get a sentence. But with Italian media, it's been quite difficult at the start, like to provide a long investigation, especially online. There's a lot of people who are not going to read. There's like 12,000 characters piece.
Well, do people read those long articles?
They have in the end. We did like a long investigation last year on Il Fatto Quotidiano, on the online version. It was on for the Mafia in Africa project, which we did with Corrective too. And it was a story on a mafia boss that went to South Africa and Zimbabwe, and it was into diamonds. In the end, like, he bought in a single transaction millions of euros worth of diamonds from Zimbabwe, from the Marange region where the bloodbath happened. And actually it was very clicked and shared. So although the editors themselves didn't expect the story to be read, people did. So like,
by the number of clicks you got. Is that how you're measuring it?
No, clicks, sharing, and well, the newspaper let us know that it was actually.
I mean, that's my question. Do we know that people actually consume what we produce? Because we measure clicks and shares, but clicks and shares, as I'm sure our friends at Google can tell us, don't mean that people actually consume even a quarter of what's there. We like to share, right? We like to click, 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 but do we actually
have two other
consume?
examples. We did 2 investigations. One was on food fraud, olive oil, food fraud, and a number of friends reported back saying, for example, they went to the dentist and ladies were talking in the waiting room about the investigation. And I keep saying, like meeting sometimes people saying, I remember that thing on TV, because then the public TV picked it up.
Right.
So, and another investigation we did was a very bad story on, the sad story on a cop in Italy that was using couch surfing to drag and rape foreign girls.
I saw that, yeah.
And nobody knows we did it, but they know the story. So I think that is a kind of way of measuring success.
Yeah. Yep, Christian, yeah.
I think the questions about clicking are very much about the European audience, but what I'm also interested in regards to the European audience is, I think it's one thing to report about things that are not working, things we spoke about, the refugee crisis and so forth, but I believe a way forward has often to do with something positive where people want to join in, and my question would be, from your perspective, what could be the narrative of Europe, like the positive one, not all the problems, but what could be something where we would all line behind and be like, yeah, I'm going for this. What would be your answer to that? Because I heard you said it was values, but I think values is always an easy way out, because you're like, everybody's for values, but which values? That's then the interesting question.
I would start with human rights. We have a quite good situation compared with other parts in the world, and we got a Nobel Peace Prize as European Union for having no war here in the last 60 years, and this sounds ridiculous.
That's something to be proud of, yeah.
This sounds kind of ridiculous because in Europe you think like, yeah, for sure we have no war here. Why should we? But it's not that obvious if you watch other parts of the world, and so there is something we could be proud of if we could trust ourselves, and if we could say like, yes, this is something we stand for, but then we have to export this in a way that that we make this valid also for people who come, and we should be kind of proud of the situation we have here, and we should not just keep it for ourselves. And I think this can be a positive message to say we welcome people.
But didn't Barack Obama tell Europe what it should be proud of on Monday when he was in Hanover? I mean, did anyone see his speech? What he said? Yeah. He gave a speech that only a departing president can give. But he basically held up a mirror in front of Angela Merkel too, and told her you need to pay your bills for NATO. Yeah. But he told Europe what it could be proud of, all of these great things, and he was actually showing how proud he was of Europe. But it's almost as if Europeans forget it. Is that what's happened?
And they have reasons for this.
But why?
They have reasons for this, and this is to the question he has put, Christian. Because I would divide it in two levels. The first level was a simple political one, independent of being a journalist or a lawyer or whatever. And this is what should we go for in Europe? I think there's only one solution. We need to democratize it. It's an anti-democratic structure which for a long time worked quite or less well because of stable economic performance. There was enough money to distribute. Now this is no longer available, and now this anti-democratic structure of the European Union, based on a more or less consensus among the national governments, national apparatuses, is no longer stable, so it doesn't work anymore. It turns against the interest of the majority of Europeans. This is the political problem, independent of being a journalist. So we need to overcome this structure. What does it mean for me as a journalist? What do I have to report about? I think it is very, very important to defend democratic values against against the European way of governance. I give you an example. The Eurogroup. No, an even more important example. Does anybody here know what the Coreper is? Have you heard this acronym? Please show up.
This is the woman who has good ties with the politicians.
3 people in this room of journalists with a high grade of consciousness know what Coreper is. I tell you, this is the most important legislative body in Europe. It's the Council of the Permanent Representatives of the Member States. This is the body where 90% of all European legislation is being decided. This is where all these horse trades are done. The people who do this are more or less unknown. They nearly never appear in public. And the whole structure is not investigated at all.
Isn't it a shadow government of the United States of Europe? Isn't that what you're describing?
No, it is not. It is not, because a government is responsible to the whole constituency. These guys, mainly guys, only very few ladies, they are only responsible to their national.
So they're like lobbyists. They're like lobbyists.
They are national lobbyists, and this plays the Europeans from day to day ever more against each other. So the Coreper example is very good. What our task is to report about the current European political structure is going to destroy the very European project. This is the real challenge, and this is what I think I have to do, and for this I need a European team.
I've been told we just have 2 minutes. I wanted to ask how you think the Brexit referendum should be reported, because that could be a cataclysmic event for the European project. So in one sentence, starting with you, I mean, what do you think?
I think we should report on the consequences that this might have. Because this means kind of we lose a lot of positive things.
You think so you think a Brexit is automatically a negative?
Well, yes.
Okay. Okay.
I'd rather leave the opinion to my colleagues, because I don't usually...
Come on, you're from Italy. No one's going to kick you out.
No.
Come on.
Of course, we got a most powerful mafia in Europe.
You're from Italy. You can say what you want. I mean, do you think that it should... Do you think journalists should approach it as a cataclysmic event, or do you think they should just approach it as this could be a change in a treaty?
Well, the way I used to see journalism, I mean, you do have political commentators and all of that, but you should just report in facts. So stick to reality as much as possible and make people aware of what they have in front.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Okay. Your question on Brexit is what do I hope? I would really love to make the British vote for an exit, because this would start a European debate about what kind of Europe we want. Because in spite of all the irrationalities in the British debate, they have a point. And the point is the lack of democracy in Brussels. So on the other hand, I have a lot of friends in Britain, and I know there will be a 60% majority for stay, because they know it would hurt themselves the most. Britain would lose, not Europe.
That's right.
At least much more than the rest of the Europeans.
But had a pleasure to stay with pounds.
So it will end like the Scottish referendum. They have a good point, but it's not enough to convince the majority.
Okay.
But they didn't have to share the burden of euro so far. I mean, they've been with pounds.
But they are dependent on the performance of the Eurozone.
I mean, who's sharing the burden of the euro? I mean, come on. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're out of time, but thank you to the 3 guests.
The dog agrees.
Yeah. Some of the dog.
The support. That's a dog.
That's a dog.
So we're going to take a 6.9-minute break. Coffee in the kitchen, bathrooms right there, smoking break down the stairs to your left. You'll see it. And then we'll come back. We'll have a quick demo of the Fader project, which won last year's TechRaking before our next panel, okay? Thanks our panel again, though. Hello, hello. Okay, so we're going to start to regather. We're bringing it in. Simon's bringing the computer over here. And Rowdy, this is Rowdy, yeah. I just put lotion on. Okay, so we're going to moisturize. Yeah. Thank you. Nice job. We leave tomorrow morning. Yeah. Good work. Good work. Thanks for doing it. You're on Twitter, right? Of course. All right, I'm going to write to you. Soon. Because we'll put you on my show. Okay, I love it. Put good stuff on the show. We'll do it. At Joaquin Alvarado. Okay. If we could bring it back in, bringing it back into the center. We have a lot of ideas have started to go up on the boards. Keep that up. If you get inspired, even if somebody is up here, go write. And we're going to get ready to have a quick run through on Fader, which is a project that came out of last year's TechRaking here in Berlin. We were originally looking at shaming and empathy online. And as a demonstration of what can come out of a TechRaking, we wanted to develop a DJ mixing board for understanding when shaming was happening around one of your stories or an internet meme. And it has evolved from that into a really exciting VR-based narrative project for reporting. And there's several people also in the audience who have been partnered in on this. So raise your hand if you were part of the just Fader team in the last TechRaking. So use these people as resources since they've kind of been through the whole thing. I am going to hand it over to Linda and Stefan from Fragments, based here in Berlin, and Trey, who's a reporter at the Center for Investigative Reporting.
Yes, so thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Joaquin, CIR, and Google News Lab, and Correctiv for organizing this second TechRaking this year, finally. It feels like we've come full circle. Stefan and I, as Joaquin already mentioned, we're both from Fragments, a VR or virtual reality studio based in Berlin, and we actually started this startup because of TechRaking last year, because it was so inspiring to us to see all the different projects. So I guess this year or today it's going to be set up very similar, where different groups are going to work on different subjects. And last year we were talking about online shaming, and we focused on VR, virtual reality, and in how far this immersive experience can change the narrative, or what we would actually have to focus while being immersed. And so we won this challenge last year, and since then it's been an incredible ride with CIR. We've met many times. We went to San Francisco, they came back over to Berlin. We went to TechRaking Paris and Washington, DC, etc. So it's been really great having the support from CIR specifically to work on a very specific journalistic story that Trey has been working on for over a year now, and also on a very specific product, and it's called Fader. And we're still in the prototyping phase, but it's a tool that is supposed to enable journalists to create VR experiences in a very easy and fast way. You know, just putting together all the media items that you have as a journalist, focusing on the story and publishing that immersive experience right away. So I'm really happy that Trey's also here today, and he can talk about the story that we've been working on together in VR.
Well, Haley, thanks for coming to TechRaking. This is my fourth TechRaking, and these are always really fun and exciting for me. So yeah, last year we met Stefan and Linda. Was it June, April? Just May? Okay. And one of those months. And once they decided they wanted to do a VR project, they decided they needed a reporter to sort of talk with them and help them understand what reporters need or what reporters might want out of VR. And as a notepad reporter who's been learning new media over the last couple of years, I really didn't have any idea what VR was all about. So we talked about, you know, is VR something that we can use to tell stories better? Is it something we can use to enhance reporting? And eventually, you know, we decided that as they're developing this prototype for something that will make it very easy and quick for reporters to do VR, we would try to sort of test the storytelling limits of VR. So right now, a lot of newsrooms are using VR, and what they're doing is, for the most part, is you read the print story or you watch the video, and those pieces of media handle the heavy lifting of storytelling, and then they'll take their VR project, and if you like the story, you can put on the goggles and you can be in the environment and see what that was like, and it's more of a experiential experience. So what we decided to do was see if we could actually tell a full-blown narrative, character-rich, document-rich investigation in VR. And so what we've constructed is 3 episodes, roughly 9 minutes long, telling the story of an investigation I've been working on for the last couple of years, which is about Jehovah's Witnesses and child sex abuse, mostly in the United States, but also in England and Australia and other countries. And we took one of the characters who I had done a radio story about and took all of her audio, all the interviews that we did. And I came back to Berlin, and Stefan and Linda and I sat down and wrote a script of what we thought we could use that already existed, of her voice telling her story. And then, so instead of looking at it as a VR project where we need to make this like Star Wars for everybody, we decided to let the audio drive the story and carry the narrative. And so what we've come up with is a solid audio narrative with all different kinds of visuals. So we use still photographs, we use Google Street View shots. I flew back to Oklahoma where this character lived to shoot more video with a 360-degree camera with her. So we actually have 3D video, small amounts of rudimentary animation, and it's basically an experiment to see what works and what doesn't in VR. How long can people stand to wear the goggles? How long do they need to look around their environment and see what's going on? So just briefly, the story is about this woman was a victim of child abuse, and her perpetrator was the most powerful elder in her Jehovah's Witness congregation. And he eventually kicked her out of the congregation, and she was shunned by her entire family. So it's a pretty devastating story, and we've tried to put it in VR in a way that you feel like this person is talking to you directly. It's almost like being actually in my shoes as a reporter, and every reporter in here knows what it's like to face a tough story and talk to somebody and ask them to give you something of themselves, even though they've already been through so much. And this hopefully will help people see what it's like to sit and actually get this information directly. So I'll turn it over to Stefan for a minute to sort of talk about actually the VR part of this.
Okay, yeah, so starting into all of this, we were facing several decisions in like how are we going to build this, so what's going to be the production stack, what's going to be the platform, and how are we going to be distributing all that content, because of course we do not only want to tell this story and produce it, we also want it to be consumed by people. And what we do have set up right now is, and we can show it here locally on a computer with an Oculus, but of course we want to also use the, I call it like democratization of VR, since there are these cheap cardboard things that you just plug your smartphone in, and you can get them at a really reasonable cheap price, and you might be lucky to visit some events like this one where there's tons of cardboards back there that I'm sure you can all check out and use. So you're thinking about the production stack. We're aiming for doing this on a web platform with web technology. And so that had several implications, like a lot of AAA productions or small medium productions in VR. Still working? Kind of? Speak up. Okay, so a lot of productions are done with still? Yeah? In case it comes up. Okay. Where's my thread? Okay, never mind. But there are currently, since VR is so young and fresh and still evolving, there are many production chains you can use right now, from full-fledged 3D computing engines up to using WebGL and web standards to create this stuff, and that's what we decided for. So we played around with a lot of stuff and coded a framework, and we've been lucky enough to find also frameworks in the open that are being tested, and we produced with something called A-Frame, which is a very lightweight and descriptive, declarative way to produce stuff. Put this into our set and work with it a little bit and tried out a lot of things, like what can we do, like how do images work, how do interfaces work, like how can our setting be. We also gained experience of the last year with creating accessible infographics in actual 3D surroundings that we're doing together with Lorenz Matzat from Berlin in 2 projects, one being the Berlin airport that's not finished and who knows if it's ever going to be finished, and also the A100 highway extension. So those were 2 projects where we also collected a lot of insights, right? And so we took all that and we took this great story that you all have a chance to check out today. So just approach me in the breaks and I can set it up for you and you can have a dive into the story with the Oculus. And we're also part of the Google D&I, so we've been considered for a prototype funding. And so all the stuff that we built and created and scripted so far, we're turning this also into a tool. So our main goal is going to actually develop this and have it available for journalists to use and create compelling narrative-focused VR stories in the future. And we're starting with the first prototyping sprints right now. We do have something that we're testing on right now, and I guess like soon there's going to be the opening for that, and we welcome you as soon as we can announce it to be test users and share your feedback, also for the story and also for the tool later on. So some closing work.
I just want to add this on. Okay. I just want to add one more thing. Is please do take a minute, and Stefan will be set up over there somewhere. And throughout the day, I'll be stopping by the groups to do some coaching, but also to see if anybody wants to walk over and take a few minutes and put the goggles on and put the headphones on and sort of see what we're talking about. And we are really interested in your feedback because this was something that we did really not knowing how to do it, and it's been an experiment. We've been surprised that so many things have actually worked out that people said would not work in VR, but we're interested in any feedback that people have about the project. So, but that's last year's TechRaking, and I hope this time we come up with something just as exciting. Thanks.
Too close to the bars. Sorry.
Wir mixen das hier.
Ja,
Geschlechterratio und so.
nachdem wir schon 50-50 sind.
Okay, this is the last talk you hear, and the next part we are going to see is about what we can really do in international collaboration, or not even international collaboration, but in collaboration in journalism itself. And we heard today something about the challenges Europe is facing, and we want to address these challenges. And we believe that this could be done through collaborative journalism. And now I would like to introduce to you these nice people. Annalisa from Journalism++. She's pretty used to a lot of collaborative stuff we're just starting to talk about. Silke Grunwald, probably everybody knows, I guess, but should know her. She's now head of Journalism Fund, but also a very experienced reporter on international projects. Next to her is, I call him all the time Pudo. And the real name is Friedrich Lichtenberg, I guess.
Lichtenberg, yeah.
Yeah, something like this. Just Pudo, it's easier. And currently he's working with OCCPR, a brand of collaborative journalists and kind of non-profit investigative newsroom in Eastern Europe. They do a lot of stuff right now about Russia, and as Russia Today announced a couple of days ago, they are funded by the CIA basically. So a good investigative journalist. And before that he used to work with an African project, also collaborating with a lot of different countries and people. So this is, I introduce you, and now I want to talk to you about one of the most important projects in the last years. That was about migrant files. Maybe you just introduce migrant files to the audience.
So the Migrant Files project is it's a cross-border investigation that we did Journalism Plus as project management, and with collaboration with more than 15 journalists across Europe. And regarding this project, everything started in early 2013. We wanted, with a group of friends and journalists, so we started small, to assess the impact of the wall built between Greece and Turkey. So it's a wall built by Greece in hopes to prevent migrants and refugees to come to Europe. And then our guess on it was that building such a wall will not prevent people to come in Europe, but only make the journey more dangerous. And to assess this guess, we wanted to answer a simple question. Is the number of deaths at the border is higher after the war than before? And we couldn't answer this question because no one counted the number of deaths at the border. No public body or no NGO counted this, and even Frontex told us that they are counting the number of people who pass, but not the number of people who die, because a migrant and refugee who die, they are not migrant refugee anymore, so they are not interested about it. So we started to create database about this. So we gathered all information we could. It was we used information that were already published, like news report, PDF, already existing database, but not well formatted and incomplete. And we did this with, let's say, the different journalists across Europe, because we needed to work with different languages.
Was it very difficult to find these partners in different kind of countries all over Europe? And I mean, of course, we do speak English, better or not so good. And what were the challenges there?
Actually, it was not the most difficult part, because we started like small with Silke here and with the journalists from Sweden and Italy. It was like friends and journalists we already worked with. And then it was all about network when we started to talk around to people and journalists that were working on it. People were interested and said, okay, I would like to participate.
And was it very difficult to get the people really work on the project, or was it like, okay, I'm participating, but not really like working and contributing?
This is one of challenge we faced, yes, when we work on collaborative projects, because journalists that work in media, they all have like different agenda and different interests and subjects, and we cannot ask everyone to collaborate and to contribute at the same level. But at the end, it doesn't really matter, because the people who are more invested, they have more interesting stories and bigger impact. So yes.
And you did a lot of work also with freelancers. I guess it's a kind of also difficult when you work on the one hand with a freelancer who is more focused on the issue, and with somebody who is within a media organization and has got to do some other stuff for his publishers.
Yeah, but as well freelancers, they have all different projects and clients. For freelancer, the main issue was the money, because we need to pay them to contribute, and not necessarily the people who are already in media organization.
And can you tell us something about the publishing of the story itself?
So we decided to publish the story everyone the same day. What we did, so after we had like the big database at Journalism++, we did the European level analysis and the overview. But each journalist and each media partner, they were free to choose their own angle. And they had access to the database, and they could like tell story about their country in Italy, specifically in Greece.
And did it work out well with all the same date? I know when I do something like this and we agree on the same date, it's a pain in the ass, you know? And always something happens and it's always big and your story is going off the paper and it's like, oh gosh.
It was difficult for Sweden last year because it was the same time of election. So, but this kind of collaboration, the most important thing is to have project management, and I think it's a key to have like very fluid communication. And as long as you have this, we can talk about this, talk about the issue, and if some journalists if they have different agenda and say, okay, we cannot publish this day, we discuss about it, and yes.
Do you think it's necessary to have something like a same-day publication for such a story? Does anybody in Sweden care about what is published in Italy?
But it's more about having a bigger impact. So yes, the same day can lead to a bigger impact, and it's as well very important to work as a team and to really that everyone feels that they are a part of the same project and not publishing their own story on their side. You know, it's like it's one project. So I think it's as well important for the
to have a deadline.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's like, okay, we are doing the story next week, and the next week is continuing to the next year. One last word about the project management itself. Did you already start with the project manager? You said, okay, we will have a project manager, or was it more like you felt the necessity of having somebody who's in charge?
No, it's in project management in journalism and collaboration. It's really a thing that we stand for at Journalism++ for a long time, because we used together at we used to work together with Pierre and Nicolas, my associate, at OVNI, a French media pure player that doesn't exist anymore. And it was really project management what was missing in this organization, and we decided to create this company because of the lack of project management. So,
okay, I learned from that most important is project management. So when you're going to do now something about a new idea you want to develop, also think about the management of the project. The next thing we would like to talk about is with Hilke. She did a story on a jihadi guy who was, maybe you just tell the story because I mix the tones all the time.
Good. Yeah, we recently published a story about a Swiss person, a Swiss male person that decided to leave Switzerland, not for good, but to go via Turkey to Syria to join al-Nusra. And with him went his wife, who came from the southern part of Germany. So we already had two places that we would need to focus on, which was in the eastern part of Switzerland, his hometown, and her hometown based in the southern part of Germany. That led us to the conclusion that we would need to team up with a partner, and at best a regional partner, which we then did with Stuttgarter Nachrichten, one of the largest broadsheets in the southern part of Germany. And eventually we worked on the investigation for about 4 months, 4 to 5 months, and were then able to publish, and of course do still follow up on the story on both sides, on the German side and also on the Swiss-German side.
Did you have any partners also in Syria, or were you going to Syria and Turkey yourselves?
We did go ourselves. A colleague of mine did that, and he worked with fixers on the ground, of course.
And how many people were in this project involved?
Oh, that is, well, I like to count everyone who did at least a little piece of work, so that everyone gets a bit of the publication fame. So it was a reporter from Germany, Franz Weider, there was me, and another colleague working for a political magazine, broadcasted on a weekly basis. We had a research colleague from Germany involved, fixers in Syria on the ground, of course. So that was the team of 5, sort of, that did the majority of the work. But then, of course, we did go back and check with our documentary team. So the guys from the documentary team supported us. It can get very large at some point in time. That's why you need a good project management system, especially if you work remotely, especially if you work in areas that are insecure. For the reporter on the ground. So yeah, it can grow huge. But we were luckily, yeah, all of our team members, they were all employed besides the fixers.
Here comes the big challenge, I guess. You said it's complex, it's big, and a lot of different media is involved. Like, one is doing videotaping, other guy is just writing. Next one was also radio. You did some broadcasting on radio.
Yes.
So different styles.
Yes.
And different countries. And what was the main challenge there?
Well, in the beginning we thought, we didn't really think about it, because we thought we're going to do it in German, not in English. We're going to work in our mother tongue. And slowly but surely we noticed that there are different ways of understanding of how investigative reporting should be handled, for example. So our colleague coming from a regional newspaper has a completely different view on what investigative reporting means than, for example, my colleague who works mainly as a TV broadcast journalist, and me being the one who works for a digital medium, mainly for the digital channel of the Swiss public broadcaster. So we needed to establish sort of a common understanding, and that took some time and of course some fighting, and then we came eventually to a point where we sat down all together. We met at my place, we had pizza and lots of wine, and it helped. So that bonding session, we should have done that far earlier in the process actually than we did. We nearly did it close to the publication date, far too late.
Can you give us some details on the challenges within that? I mean, when you say, okay, there were different cultures, what does it mean? The one guy is only talking to people and say, I don't need any papers, and the other guy says, I don't only need papers.
As you say, it starts with the facts. I mean, it's nice that you collect information from sources, people that tell you something, but people telling me something is not enough. I need facts, because eventually in the reporting process, I will have a fact-checking point, a milestone, where we do fact-checking, and fact-checking needs to be done with proper material, data sets, documents. It can be audio, taped from an interview, for example, and there we actually noticed, all 3 of us, the TV colleague, me as a digital person, the newspaper colleague, we all had different levels of what we wanted to put in the story and how we prove it actually. And in the end I won, me with the strongest voice when it came to the fact-checking eventually. That also meant that we left out certain parts of information that might have been interesting, but we simply couldn't let it go through the fact-checking eventually. So,
last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the legal point of such a story. You do have different legal assessments in Europe. Like, for example, in Germany, it's forbidden to publish anything that is in court files. A couple of days ago, the investigators in southern Germany started an investigation on reporters because not of their story, but because they published some documents from a file of a court. So different approaches, different problems. What is it about the story you did?
Actually, this happened to us as well. We did our legal check with our legal department because we have that. If you are working as a freelancer, try to get a legal consultant who helpfully helps you on a pro bono basis. We did that. We all material, the whole story, written, TV piece, everything went through legal, and they gave their okay. But we published actually a piece that was marked as confidential by German authorities. And of course, our German colleagues were not very happy with that, so we needed to retract that piece of information, which was actually an image taken out of files that have been marked as confidential.
Mm.
But from the Swiss perspective, it was totally okay legally. Auth checks through, but again, in Germany, different story.
So we learn from that you've got not only different countries in Germany, but different approaches, and different approaches in medias.
Yeah.
So we come back to you. You need big, good project management. Friedrich, I need to think of it, not Pudo, Friedrich.
Pudo's good.
Yeah. You are more the tech guy. You are
Yes.
working on the technical
Uniform gives it away.
Yeah, and this is also, especially in this investigations, cross-border investigations, it's always a big part. Can you give us some hints what the challenges are?
Getting people to talk to each other, project management, definitely. Maybe a bit of background. So the organization I work with right now has a beautiful name, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. And they are a network of something like 24 or so different reporting centers in different countries in Eastern Europe. And what we're trying to do is basically we're trying to connect them and trying to enable them to do better cross-border investigations, also try and support them with journalistic, let's say, capabilities that as a small organization you wouldn't be able to have, whether that's editorial support, fact-checking support, research. We've got some fantastic researchers, and you can use them too on investigativedashboard.org, end of commercial. And also one aspect is technical, right? So we're trying to provide support with regards to technology, both with regards to security, which is one big aspect of this, right? So when you're using security, when you're using technology in an investigation, you're handling sensitive materials. Sooner or later, you're going to get into a place where you're at risk of disclosing stuff that you didn't mean to disclose, or people might be able to penetrate your investigation, find out all the stuff you have. And that's one big aspect, and the other big aspect is data, I guess. So trying to use material, databases, resources that are on the web to really deepen the investigation, to find out information that you couldn't get your hands at otherwise, to do more systematic investigations, to do cross-referencing and say, okay, all the things that I'm interested in, do they pop up in this, I don't know, Cayman's company register, whatever it is. So we're trying to do that. One thing that we haven't really gotten around to yet that I think is the third big pillar of what tech does to investigative journalism is storytelling, and trying to really kind of improve the way that a story is then kind of narrated to the listener, to kind of go, I guess, beyond kind of the fake moustache for journalism, where you're putting on like a big image to hide the fact that you're the same guys who used to put stuff on dead trees, but to really kind of find ways to communicate the stuff in new ways. I don't know, yeah.
One thing we just talked about when we were outside smoking cigarettes was a question like, is virtual reality, VR, is it really important, or is it just some bullshit people do to show off that they don't have a real story?
Yeah.
And you said, okay, it's more important to make the background checks, to do give the reporters the ability to find in big data sets real good stories or real good stuff. By the way, I recommend you really to look at these VR thing that is here, because this is good stuff, great stuff, and not bullshit. And this was my argument, and now comes your argument.
I think there's kind of a religious divide in data journalism right now. There's people who believe that the most important thing is telling the story in a new way. And there's people like myself who believe that the most important thing is finding out ways of actually getting at better journalism, at getting better stories out of stuff. So I'm kind of really fascinated with how can we actually modify the way that we go about constructing a story in the first place, and then kind of really find information and find aspects to it that we haven't been able to do previously. And I think this is where technology and cross-border are really related, in the sense that these are new ways of kind of enhancing the reach of where you as an individual can go in terms of acquiring information. And I think this is kind of what really has me most fascinated with stuff. I think at the end, most news stories are going to be read by someone who clicked on the wrong link on Facebook anyway, and so they're going to be like a piece of text or a VR, depends on where you are as a human. But I think what we really can do is we can deepen the way that we find out about stuff, that we kind of contextualize information, that we enrich it as reporters.
I see it very important what he said. When we do reporting here in Correctiv, we put a lot of effort, a lot of funding, a lot of time and ability that we've got in researching, in investigating things. And on the end part of this, we don't have enough time and funding and stuff to do the publication stuff. So often it happens that the story is just on our website, a very, very long story. And it happens that people read this, but sometimes they don't. And on the other hand, you've got something like Snowfall. Snowfall was beautiful, very good, and impressive, but I'm pretty sure that almost nobody read it to the end, or made it to the end. And this is something important, and I think we need to figure out a way how to put more funding, more interest also in the publishing, but first have the story. And this is the important thing about what you need to look here, because there is a good story, and then they made the VR thing, not the other way around.
Just going onto that, right? I think Snowfall is probably one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to like newspapers or to storytelling on the web. I think it's probably one of the worst things that's ever happened to investigative reporting. Because I think investigative reporting already has this kind of sadomaso theory where if I spend 6 months investigating something, you better spend at least 2 hours reading it, right? So there's no way that my 6-month investigation is going to go into a 10-minute piece. And Snowfall has given all of you guys license to now live that weird revenge fantasy out on us and kind of say, well, you can always kind of go in and take that really long thing that describes like a 10 level company ownership hierarchy, and you can now spruce it up with like a big image in the middle, and now it's okay again to kind of really torture your victims with your reporting. And I think these are completely independent. I think you can have like a one-page thing that has amazing, maybe a nice character or something in it, and you've really told the thing. And I would encourage people to try and get over that kind of sentimental thing of, no, I spent so much time on this. This is really going to be this massive expose of epic length and dimensions.
Very important. Very good. And what is fun about this takes also a lot of time to get rid of all the stuff that you investigated beforehand.
Yeah.
And this comes to funding itself. Migrant files, for example, it was also a huge project. Tell us about something about the funding itself.
We started and we were funded by the Jerusalem Fund, but we got like 10,000 euro that we use to pay, as I said before, the freelance journalists. Because at Journalism Plus we have 3 sources of incomes. We are doing a lot of trainings for journalists, so we are paid as trainers. We are working like an agency, so we have clients that mostly NGO that want to build application, map, anything of visualization, so we are paid to do this. And we have grants, but actually it's really a small part of our incomes. We use grants to start projects, but we are not earning money with grants. Actually with Migrant File, Journalism Plus lost money working on Migrant Files because it was not the aim like doing such project for us, it's communication.
What I think is very important, especially on the thing you did, you were like, you had some funding. I think in total it was around 20,000 something. But there were so many people working on it, and it took so long for a time. So it was basically only for the tech part, wasn't it?
The funding?
Yeah.
No, it was for freelance journalists.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The tech part actually in this project, it was only like web page with our insights and map and very small and simple visualization, but it was maybe 5 days of work to do this.
But I see it very interesting from my point of view. It's pretty easy nowadays to get money for some tech stuff, for some fancy tech stuff, it's even easier. But for the reporting itself, it became very important to get the stuff done for your database you set up. So this is the main problem. It was the main task for you guys, wasn't it?
It's difficult to say because at the end it was when we applied at Journalism Fund, it was really about for the story, and we didn't even talk about the tech part. And at Journalism Plus, we are lucky because we have a very good developer that can do like amazing stuff. And in case of collaborative projects with journalists, it will be difficult to find a developer, yes, because it's very rare that you have a developer embedded in media organization that can do stuff. So yes, it was kind of chance.
Okay. Silke, I want to talk to you about this money part. You know, not only working with Swiss TV, which is rich, maybe the yeah, okay. But now you're working with also with Journalism Fund,
right?
And this is one of the few chances you get in Europe to get cross-border funding. Can you tell us something about the aim, goals? And
yes. Well, since I think it was March, April that we communicated that I'm chairing now journalismfund.eu. And journalismfund.eu is an organization that gives grants to journalists to encourage cross-border, in-depth investigative reporting. And they do that since about 15 years. It has evolved from a Belgium-focused organization, NGO, to now a pan-European organization. And as said, the goal is to foster cross-border investigations. With the migrants files, we were lucky to receive 2 grants in a row. And now, with me being the chairwoman, I needed to leave the project, of course, to avoid any conflicts of interests. We invite all journalists across Europe to apply with their projects and see whether we could help you, not only with funding, but also with knowledge management, and also editorial support. So those are the 3 pillars that we can offer to journalists. When we talk about money, it's not the massive amounts of money that we do spend, not especially compared to the US. We had this discussion before. We, for example, for the migrants files, we received 2 grants, each of, I think, 6,000 euros something. That is about sort of the average amount that we do offer. In total, we have about €1 million that we can actually give as grants away every year. So you see where my major focus is now is not, receiving money for a journalistic project, but getting out there, getting donors attracted to give us money that then we can redistribute maybe to any of you guys here in the audience. And it's a real challenge, actually.
Could you tell us something more about this financing of international projects? When I know you did a lot of international collaborations, what is the financing like? Usually when you collaborate with another news organization, there's a journalist, he's kind of paid, but then you need to hire some freelancers. Yeah. What is the task there?
Well, from my experience as a reporter, having been part of collaborative projects, it actually the majority of the amount of money that you would need as petty cash or extra funding actually goes to hiring freelance journalists. Because that is the one thing that I always wanted when I work in a project and do collaborate. I actually want to have a colleague that I know, if he's a freelancer or if she's a freelancer, she can actually pay her rent with this. So it's not about exploiting additionally our colleagues, but to secure their situation, whether they are based in Syria or whether they are based in Italy or whether they're based in Germany, it doesn't matter. They need to be paid for the work that they do, especially when I'm in the very comfortable position that I'm fully employed before by the Neue Zürcher Zeitung and now with the Swiss public broadcaster. And in addition, there is some extra money that you probably would need to use technology to make this collaboration work, especially if you do cross-border. You don't sit in one office. You somehow have to bridge that gap to that other person, and then technology can be very, very helpful. But then it's sort of in the background. It's not in the foreground, of course. And there you need money again to spend to be able to host a website, for example, to be able to use a project management tool, so on and so forth.
I do also have kind of experience in this bigger collaborations, and from my point of view, when I see how do you an application for getting funds for big investigation, often is a problem not thought of, and this is a problem what you talked about, the bonding system. You need to meet each other, and often you don't have any space in this applications where you can fill in like, we need to meet and we need some money for some hotels and probably for a couple of beers around. And another problem is, I often see you get in these applications set like, okay, you can spend 20 or 30% on some technology stuff, but the investigations you are working on, it's more about, I need to meet people.
But journalism funds already fixed that for you.
Yeah, they
running their data harvest conference, which I think we need to advertise here.
Yes,
very quickly on the 2nd to 5th or something.
Yes.
Of
You're
June.
good. He's not paid. To make that clear. No, actually, that's how. I mean, when we started, we knew each other within the Migrants Files quite well. So it was, as you said, it was a group of friends, colleagues, and it was our pet project. I think it took me about a year, and it was actually at Data Harvest that I then met the larger group that we then worked with a couple of last years ago. So conferences are a good opportunity to actually meet out, and Data Harvest is one of those conferences.
One of the steaming conferences where people just don't go to the panels but sit behind
and work
for stories.
And work, right? So that's what we actually did. We met at Data Harvest, and then we worked for a whole day. So yeah, we did not attend any panel or so, but it was good for us. And then of course, again, bonding, have a beer, go out, have dinner together, and we did that just a couple of weeks ago in Perugia, where we met at the International Journalism Festival. So there are opportunities where you actually combine your traveling because of any other professional reasons that you might have, and then meeting your colleagues that you actually work with.
And I think it's very important, if you have in mind that we are in Europe and we want to do European stories, or stories that aim to report on some stuff that has got a European impact. I think you need to go to the other countries. It sounds pretty simple, but when you walk around at the conferences that there are in Europe, there are not so many attendees from other countries. So this is important. You also, with OCCPR, you have got some interesting funding things. If you don't know, I know. But I want to ask you first. I give you the chance to answer. And when you collaborate cross-border, and you've got like colleagues and centers all over East Europe, how do you get the money? How do you spend the money?
So I'm neither involved in getting the money, nor in spending it on our centers. I have to be very clear about this. So the way that OCCRP is funded is mostly through development money. So there's the US Foreign, basically Department of State, that has given us several grants, and there is mainly the Open Societies Foundations, George Soros kind of investment vehicle. And that's obviously kind of a weird thing if you come into Eastern European countries and you have like a little US symbol at the bottom of your website. It was beautiful, like during the Panama Papers, everybody posted the screenshot of like the website that we made, and I was so proud that someone posted screenshots of my website, but it was only the part about the funding. So basically the assumption is that you're kind of foreign agents then, which is fairly ridiculous because, I don't know, we get money to do media development, not to do specific stories, and there's zero input that anyone in those organizations has on what stories we do or don't do. But it's kind of an interesting thing to see, like in various countries, how we're then getting attacked very, very specifically for those things, mainly to kind of detract from the actual narrative of the stories. And another thing that kind of just as an input to this conversation, I feel really bad sitting here because I'm a techie, and techies get kind of very, very special treatment in like this industry right now, right? So basically, I think there's many different kind of opportunities for us to get funding, mainly in the States, but also sometimes in Europe. And then you get these massive kind of projects that are launched to kind of build out technology for journalism, and they have zero funding for journalism in them, right? So I think there should be a rule to say that if you're going to do anything with media and you're going to anything that involves building technology, you need to allocate like 40% for journalism, for actual reporting. You can sign it up as like user research or something. So just so that it doesn't stay theory as well, because for us it's kind of weird. I was in this one project that was kind of funded with like 250,000 euros for building cool tech for journalists, and we had zero money for journalism, right? And so do you know how many journalists ended up using our tech? I'll give you a hint, it's like a very round number. So it's bad for both sides in the end. So I think in that sense, we have to kind of, I often think of the technology as like the sprinkles. It's kind of the thing that makes people who give money look amazing and look kind of innovative, especially if it's kind of something that nobody has actually touched yet, like VR, and no normal mortals have touched yet. It makes you look really cool to kind of fund that, but then you should also kind of eat your gravy and fund some journalism on the way there, just as a tax on reality.
Yeah, this is also good. But I wanted to talk about something different. What I find very interesting in OCCPRs, you do like hire freelancers over Eastern Europe, kind of contract workers with you, and they get on a regular base money. So you do have a network working in other countries. They don't get really a lot of money, it's a small amount, but on this way you get like stable connections. And this is something I find very important when it comes to international collaborations. You need these lines of trust, you need these lines of confinement. You know, this is the guy I'm working with, I trust him or her, and they're doing good work, and okay, to make this line better and more reliable, to put some money on it and say, okay, this is something I really appreciate in OCCPR.
I think the goal is always to build like independent centers, people who do their own research, who have their own editorial capacity, but as you get them bootstrapped, sometimes there's this external support. I think that there's one risk with this, which is kind of that I think investigative journalism is about to go a bit tribal. So only in Germany here we've got how many different research networks now that are kind of becoming these tribal things and waiting for people to wear like special hats to conferences. So like I wonder if that's really the best way of doing it, kind of forming these weird, I don't know, alliances.
It can be a start, but from my experience, it depends on the story, right? We had this cross-border investigation that I mentioned earlier. I needed a partner in southern Germany, so that's why we teamed up and worked together. We did, now the disclaimer, I did some Swiss fixing for you as well, so that did work out again quite well. We did work together, so it's not fixed. It really depends on the story and what is necessary, what people want me to do.
Exactly.
Sometimes I'm the one that looks for the fixer, sometimes I am the fixer on the ground. And I think that's the best way that you could handle it. If it helps to sort of build up an institution like ICIJ, now with the, what is it called, the European Investigative Collaboration with Der Spiegel in Germany, and I think El Mundo, Las Presas, or Mediapart. If it helps institutions to team up, why shouldn't they? But eventually, you as a reporter, you need to be able to be flexible.
Because they're exclusive clubs. Like, it means that smaller people that might have a good lead and need to follow it up in a different country might feel less attracted to now talking to Spiegel or Mediapart, or might feel less attracted to talking to the NDR, whatever thingy it is.
Yeah, but my advice is, as a reporter, is try to stay as flexible as you can, because then you only then get most of your reporting.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, I would love to hear your questions, but I don't allow them. We are running out of time, so please keep your questions for the break. Pizza is coming pretty soon, and I would like to summarize somehow this thing. First is, if you want to do international collaboration, be aware of project management. And this is the most important thing. Be aware of it first. Second, look for some funding, not only for tech stuff, but also for reporting stuff. Fourth is be, on the one hand, on a trusted side with trusted colleagues. On the other side, be flexible enough to do something completely different. That's it. Ready.
Thank you.
And then fine.
Okay, now for the complicated part, if that's okay. So pizza's coming soon. What I'd like to do is just invite complete fucking chaos by having everybody go to this side of the room. Don't do it yet. We're going to start then going through the ideas that are on the board. If you wanted to write an idea, now's a good time to like get it written down. And whoever wrote the idea, we'll give you the mic, explain a little bit about it, and this is how the teams start to form. So there's already a good run out here. I expect there to be more ones to come up. So calmly stampede to that direction, and we'll start right at that first board over there. And then the pizza will come in. Don't get distracted by the smell of delicious pizza. And once you grab your pizza, think about what team you want to be on. We have the cafe downstairs, so about 4 or 5 teams can go hang out down there. And we can have, 4 or 5 teams up here. Teams can be 2 people, they can be 15 people. So there's no rules about that. So a little bit of anarchy is okay here. So everybody go that way for one moment.
Dankeschön.
Thank you. Okay, wasn't it?